Nestled within the deep valleys and dense forests of the Appalachian Mountains are stories as ancient as the very rocks that form their steep slopes. Our story begins in this isolated setting, in McDowell County, West Virginia around 1923, where families remained cut off from the outside world for generations. At the end of a road that turned impassable in winter stood the small log cabin of the Hollister family. Their isolation was so complete that for 4 or 5 months each year, they saw no one but themselves. This seclusion would become the perfect backdrop for a tragedy spanning generations. The patriarch was Jeremiah Hollister, a tall, bony man with a thick beard and penetrating blue eyes. Widowed at 42, he raised his delicate-featured daughter Martha alone after her mother, Sarah, died during a difficult childbirth when Martha was only 6. The baby boy did not survive either. From then on, father and daughter lived alone in that small cabin. Their closest neighbors were nearly 10 kilometers away, making visits a rare occurrence. The pastor from the small church tried to visit once a year, usually in summer. He noticed Martha, then 14, growing increasingly withdrawn, avoiding eye contact and keeping her arms crossed tightly. Jeremiah was always a strange man, says Eleanora Davis, now 93, one of the few still alive who knew the Hollisters. Even before Sarah's death, he rarely came to town. It was Sarah who bought supplies, always in a hurry, always looking over her shoulder as if afraid of being followed. A strange dynamic between father and daughter was noted by locals. On the rare occasions they appeared together at the village store, Martha seemed a shadow, always a step behind her father, replying only in monosyllables if spoken to. The winter of 1937 was particularly severe in the mountains. It was during this winter that Martha, then 20, became pregnant with her first child. When spring arrived, Martha did not come to town with her father. Rumors began when Jeremiah was seen buying baby clothes. "My daughter is expecting," was all he said, his face as impassive as the mountain stone. Suspicions grew among the community. Martha had not been seen with any men, and no suitor had climbed the mountain to court her. Darker theories began to whisper through the community. Dr. William Foster, the region's only doctor, was finally called to the Hollister cabin on a rainy night in June 1938. Martha was in labor with complications. What Dr. Foster found in that cabin would haunt him for life. A pale and fragile Martha was giving birth to a girl whose facial features immediately suggested consanguinity to the experienced doctor. The infant had several characteristics typical of children from close kin: heart defects, extra fingers, a visibly underdeveloped jaw. She survived only 3 days. Martha never named the father, but the doctor's suspicions were recorded in his diary, along with the disturbing note that Jeremiah seemed more devastated than a grandfather should be. "He held her as if she were his own daughter," wrote the doctor. "He cried in a way that made me look away, as if witnessing something too intimate, too sacred in its perversity." In those isolated mountains, where law rarely reached, families often married among themselves to keep land, cousins to cousins, uncles to nieces. But even in this context, certain boundaries were respected. The relationship between father and daughter was a taboo few communities tolerated. Check if you're already subscribed to this channel. Don't miss any shocking stories like this one that reveal the dark truths hidden in American families. Subscribe now to dive into humanity's darkest secrets. After the first daughter's death, a silence fell on the Hollister cabin. For almost a year, no one in town saw Martha. Jeremiah came down alone for supplies, avoiding conversation. By April 1939, Martha was pregnant a second time. The child, a boy named Elijah, was born at home with midwife Ida Mae Jenkins, called only at the last moment. "That house had a strange smell," Ida Mae reported years later. "Something like a wounded animal, an odor of despair. And when I saw the baby, I understood." The boy was born with visible deformities, fused fingers like a claw, heterochromatic eyes, one blue like Jeremiah's, one brown like Martha's. More concerning was his abnormally large head, a sign of hydrocephalus. "That boy won't survive the winter," Ida Mae told Jeremiah, who received the news with a nod. Yet Elijah survived not just that winter, but the next 5 years. He never spoke more than a few words, and his movements were limited. Martha carried him everywhere. During these years, she became pregnant twice more. The third child, a girl named Ruth, had less visible deformities but clear mental impairment. The fourth, another boy, was stillborn in 1944, buried in the small family cemetery behind the cabin. That family always had problems with stillborn or short-lived babies, explains local historian Harlan Thompson. Records show the Hollisters came in the 1820s and married almost exclusively among cousins. This pattern created a concentration of problematic genes. In 1945, tragedy struck again when 6-year-old Elijah succumbed to pneumonia. At the funeral, neighbors noticed Martha, holding 4-year-old Ruth's hand, appeared pregnant once more. Martha's fifth child was born in June 1946, a girl named Sarah after Martha's mother. Unlike her siblings, Sarah appeared relatively healthy, with deep blue eyes identical to Jeremiah's. Sarah's apparent normality changed Jeremiah. He began taking her to town, showing her off with a pride locals found disturbing. He treated her as if she were his own daughter, not his granddaughter, recalls Clementine Parker, who worked at the store. The resemblance was undeniable. As Sarah grew, it was clear she had escaped the worst genetic consequences. At 5, she sporadically attended school. Her teacher, Miss Abigail Wilson, noted that despite some difficulties, Sarah was more advanced than Ruth. It was through Sarah that the outside world glimpsed the truth of the Hollister cabin. On a rainy autumn day in 1952, Sarah arrived at school with a visible bruise. When questioned, she said, "Daddy got angry because Mommy didn't want to sleep in his bed anymore. He says Mommy is his, that she always has been since Grandma died." Miss Wilson reported this to Sheriff John Buchanan, but without concrete evidence beyond the child's word, he was reluctant to intervene. "Those mountain families have their own customs," he said. The winter of 1952-53 further isolated the cabin. When spring came, Martha was seen in town with Ruth and Sarah, looking worn and older than her 36 years. Jeremiah was absent. In July 1953, a lost hunter, Joseph Miller, passed near the property and saw a recent grave with a rudimentary headstone for Jeremiah Hollister, dated January 12, 1953. "I thought it strange no one knew he died," Miller told the sheriff. "But the strangest thing was what I saw through the window. Martha sat at the table with the two girls, and she seemed happy. Like a weight was lifted." The summer of 1953 brought changes. With Jeremiah's death, Martha found new freedom. She visited town more, started a garden, and let Sarah attend school regularly. Ruth, though limited, showed improved behavior. During this period, Martha met Jacob Wheeler, a middle-aged widower and carpenter who had recently moved to the region. He ignored the rumors. "Everyone has a past," he would say. Their friendship grew from casual encounters. For a woman who lived under oppressive control, Jacob's kindness was like water in the desert. In October 1953, he asked to formally court her. The community reacted with shock and morbid curiosity. One Sunday after church, Clementine Parker confronted Jacob. "You know who those girls' father is, don't you?" she insinuated. Jacob, uncomfortable, said he assumed it was Martha's deceased husband. Clementine gave a dry laugh. "Martha was never married, Jacob. Those girls, their father is the same man who was Martha's father. Jeremiah Hollister kept his own daughter. You're getting involved with a cursed family." The revelation struck Jacob physically. He drove for hours before going to the Hollister cabin that night. Martha sat on the porch as if waiting. "You found out, didn't you?" she asked, her voice calm and resigned. Jacob nodded, wordless. "I understand if you never want to see me again," Martha continued. "But before you go, hear my story." Under the Appalachian stars, Martha told of the abuse beginning shortly after her mother's death, her attempted escape at 14, being chained to the bed as punishment, and the pregnancies that followed. "I loved them," she said, tears streaming. "Despite how they were conceived. They were my children." "And Jeremiah," Jacob finally asked, "how did he die?" Martha looked at the sky a long moment. "The winter was harsh. He got sick. Pneumonia, probably. He refused to see a doctor. One day, he simply didn't wake up. There was a hesitation that made Jacob wonder if he heard the whole truth. But who was he to judge? The day he died, I felt I could breathe for the first time in decades, Martha said. It's terrible to say, but it was as if a shadow lifted from me and the girls. Jacob took Martha's hands. No one should go through what you did. Sarah appeared at the door, her blue eyes, Jeremiah's eyes, wide in the dark. Mommy. It's all right, dear. Mr. Wheeler and I are just talking. She looks like him, Martha said softly after Sarah went inside. Sometimes I see him looking back, and my heart freezes. But then she smiles, and I remember she is not him. She is herself, despite everything. Have you ever wondered how many Marthas are hidden out there, suffering in silence, trapped in generational cycles of abuse? Leave in the comments, break the silence, to show we are attentive to these stories that need to be told, ***. The following months brought a near-normal routine. Jacob helped with repairs and brought gifts. Martha, who once flinched at noise, now occasionally smiled. Their relationship became the main gossip topic. Meanwhile, Martha struggled with internal demons. Nightmares of Jeremiah woke her sweating and trembling. Jacob suggested she talk to someone. Dr. Richard Montgomery, a visiting psychiatrist, became an ally. He understood her trauma was a natural response to years of abuse. Slowly, Martha began to process her pain. Sarah, now 7, flourished in school. Ruth developed surprising skill in sewing and crafts. But as they grew, questions arose. Why don't I have a father like the other children? Sarah asked one night. Martha's hand trembled. Your grandfather Jeremiah took care of us after your father left, she said carefully. And where did my father go? He wasn't ready to be a father. Sarah sensed there was more but learned not to press. In 1956, 3 years after Jeremiah's death, Jacob proposed during a picnic. Are you sure? Martha asked. After all you know. I know you, Martha, Jacob said. A survivor. A mother. A woman with more strength than anyone I've known. The wedding was a small ceremony in the cabin. Life as Mrs. Wheeler brought Martha a new sense of legitimacy. For the girls, Jacob became a patient, gentle father figure. But the past resurfaced. In 1959, 13-year-old Sarah found an old diary in the attic, her mother's, begun after her grandmother's death. The yellowed pages held the raw truth. Her grandfather was her father, the deaths of her siblings, her mother's suffering. Martha found Sarah on the bed, the diary open, tears on her face. A chill spread through Martha. Is it true? Sarah asked, voice broken. Grandpa Jeremiah was my father. Martha closed her eyes. Yes, she finally sighed. Yes, it's true. The revelation shook the family. Sarah withdrew, stopped attending school. I'm a freak, she told Martha. Half my genes from the same place. What's wrong with me we haven't discovered yet. Martha explained the genetic risks, why some children are more affected, and that Sarah seemed to have escaped the worst. Jacob suggested a genetic specialist. Dr. Benjamin Rosen in Philadelphia saw them. You are not a freak, he told Sarah. You are a young woman born in difficult circumstances, but that does not define you. He explained recessive genes and assured her that children with an unrelated partner would likely be healthy. The consultation marked a turning point. Sarah began to separate her origins from her identity. She was Sarah Wheeler, having officially taken Jacob's name, a young woman with her own dreams. Life found a new balance. Ruth's quilts gained recognition beyond the community. In 1962, 16-year-old Sarah met Michael Prescott, a professor's son studying Appalachian culture. When she told him her history, fearing rejection, he surprised her. My father is Jewish, he said. My grandparents escaped the pogroms. I know about carrying family history. Their romance flourished. Sarah earned a nursing scholarship to West Virginia University. Martha watched with pride and amazement as her daughter charted a path of education, career, and choice. In 1965, Sarah and Michael married in a university chapel. Martha, radiant in light blue, saw her daughter walk toward an unimaginable future. That same year, Dr. Montgomery suggested Martha share her story anonymously to help professionals understand and aid victims. After consideration, she agreed. Her case, published as Patient H, became one of the most cited in early trauma literature. In 1970, Ruth died peacefully in her sleep at 29 from heart complications likely related to her genetics, surrounded by her quilts and tapestries. Sarah, now a nurse and mother of 2 healthy children, Elizabeth and James, returned for the funeral. Martha, 53, watched her grandchildren play in the clearing where she and her children had played. "They'll never know, will they?" she asked Sarah. "About Jeremiah. About everything. One day, when they're older, I'll tell them a version," Sarah replied. "Enough for them to understand where we came from, what we overcame. I want them to know their grandmother's strength. How you broke a cycle that could have continued." "Do you think it's possible?" Martha asked, tears in her eyes, "really breaking the cycle after so many generations?" Sarah smiled, a look of knowledge and hope. "Look at them, Mom. Look at me, at Michael. At you and Jacob. We've already broken it." As the sun set behind the Appalachians, bathing the clearing in gold, Martha Hollister Wheeler finally allowed herself to believe that perhaps the sins of the fathers need not be visited upon the children, that with love, courage, and truth, even the darkest stories could give way to new beginnings. The years passed. The Hollister cabin, abandoned after Martha and Jacob's deaths in 1985, slowly returned to earth. The small cemetery remains a peaceful place, visited occasionally by Sarah and her descendants. The story lives now in academic memory, in studies on abuse and resilience, and in the stories passed down in Sarah's family. What was once a cycle of trauma became a narrative of overcoming. Check if you're already subscribed to this channel. Don't miss any impactful stories like this one that reveal the dark truths hidden in American families. Subscribe now to continue exploring humanity's darkest secrets, ***. If you watched until here, you liked this story. Leave a comment saying, "I watched until here," so I can get to know you and who really likes the stories on this channel. Don't forget to like and share this story with those who would be impacted by this revelation about the dark side of life in the Appalachian Mountains, ***.